Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be continuing my 2018 reading wrap-ups with books 56 through 70. In these videos I do short, quick mini reviews of all the most current books that I've read. If you've missed any of the other parts, I'll leave them linked down in the description as a playlist and you can go and check them out. Sorry for the very obnoxious neon yellow shirt, but I'm doing something similar in my wrap-ups this year as I did last year. And apparently I don't own very many yellow shirts. You guys know how these work, so let's just get started. The 56th book that I read in 2018 is Raven Stratagem by Yoon-Ha Lee. This is the second book in the Machineries of Empire series. I did an individual book review for this, so I'll leave that up in the card symbol if you want to check it out. I also did a review of the first book, and I'll leave that down in the description if you want to check it out, because in that one I do a lot more of the world building explanation. This world is very complicated. It's basically a future scientific world where humans have taken over different solar systems. They're very widespread. The society that most humans belong to is called the Hexarchate, and it has 6 different branches of service that you can go into. The main character of the first book decides to go into the Kell, and they're called the Crash Hawks or something like that, because a lot of people that go into the Kell end up dying because they are the infantry, the soldiers of this world that are sent in all over the place to keep order and to prevent heresy. And in this book, it's just a continuation of the events of the first one. In this one, I felt like the story was way easier to get into. The first one is pretty complicated and complex. It just drops you into the middle of the action. You have to try to stay afloat until you start to understand things. And this one, it gradually lets you back into the story and you don't have a hard time getting back into it. I thought the writing, because of that, was just way more accessible. In this book specifically, I really enjoyed a character named Mikodes, who is not one of the main characters, but he's probably the most interesting character because he has the most craziness going on. I'm just very excited to see where all of these characters will go in the next book, and I enjoyed this book immensely. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The way that this one ends, I'm just very excited to get my hands on the third book, which is already out, so hopefully I'll get my hands on that one and read it soon. And I'll let you guys know how the series concludes, because I think the third book is the last one. Check out my review if you want to know more specific thoughts. The next book I read is Island of Silence by Lisa McMahon. This is the second book in the Unwanted series. I read the first book a little earlier on in the year, and I wanted to continue on and see what happens to these characters next. In the first book, it follows this character named Alex. At the beginning of the book, he finds out that he is an unwanted. In this world, if you are wanted or if you're necessary, you get to stay inside of society, and if you're unwanted, you get kicked out of society and you get killed. Obviously, this is middle grade, so in the beginning of the first book, Alex and the rest of the Unwanteds are saved and taken to this place called Arteme, where their creativity and artistic natures are praised and encouraged. There's tension in that whole first book because people are fearful that the Quillians, the people that are living in the society, will find out about Artemeans, and that will be a problem. This book is a continuation of that story. I got right back into the story and didn't miss a beat. I really liked how this explored the after effects of what happens in the first book. We explore a little bit more than just Quill and Arteme. We get to see what's going on around their island. The magic expands, there's new spells, there's new mysteries to get solved, and I was liking how the characters dealt with this changing society as well as changing world. It's just a really fun series with some really likable characters. There were a couple of things that I didn't love about this book. One was that the ending of this book is very unsatisfying. It's just like, boom, ending. And you have to continue on and read the third one to find out what happens next. I haven't continued yet, so I don't know what happens next, but I don't like when nothing is wrapped up, where the book just ends abruptly. I like when at least one thing is solved, or one small little thing is wrapped up and finished and makes you feel good about finishing the novel. This doesn't really have that. The other con that I had, the more significant con that bumped this novel down for me, was that I really didn't like the fun new attack spells that they came up with. Especially, I don't like the names. You could have had the same effect of the spell and I wouldn't have been bothered, but the names of these new fun attack spells that they're using are heart attack and dementia and stuff like that, and those are pretty devastating things that people have to go through all the time. I didn't like that it was just kind of lightened up in this book. It could be that I'm just being overly sensitive because we just put my grandfather in an assisted living situation because he has such bad dementia that it's dangerous for him to live with just my grandmother. So that could be a thing, and dementia isn't like funny to me, but I don't think it's fun to like give someone a baby heart attack and then, oh, it's fine, that's a great spell. What? No, that's not that's not fun. Didn't really love the spells. I thought it was just kind of insensitive. Yeah, so I ended up giving this book like 3.5 stars, even though I enjoyed the majority of it. It was just, I really didn't like this one main aspect of this book, and it really bumped it down like a 1.5 stars for me. So sorry about it, but didn't like that. The next book I read was for the BookTubeSFF Awards. I also ended up giving this one 3.5 stars, and that is Born by Jeff Vandermeer. This one follows a character named Rachel. She's living in this post-apocalyptic city that's run by a couple of different people. Her city is ruled by this genetically engineered flying bear called Mord, and basically Mord flies around, destroys tons of things, and ends up being so enormous that it provides life for the people living in the city. And at the beginning of the book, she finds this goopy mess that she brings home and thinks is maybe this genetically modified plant, but it turns out that it's more like octopus-like, more Medusa in form. She ends up naming this form Born, and over time Born grows and starts to become sentient. There's also a couple of other key players in the mix. Rachel lives with this guy named Wick, who provides people in the city with technological gadgets and everything like that. And there's also the company, who is the people who made Mord. This book does an interesting job exploring aspects of motherhood as well as love and loss and survivalship. But that motherhood thing is very narrowed in on. Rachel feels very motherly for Born and protects him and everything like that. That whole thing is just very interesting. It's the most interesting part of the book for me. But as I was reading, I found the book was pretty repetitive. The same things happen over and over again, and it just kind of plots along. Also, the very ending of the book was kind of chaotic, and I had to reread chapters so that I would understand what was happening. So I didn't really love it, but I did really like it, so I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I could easily see this being one of those books that sticks with me, and I noodle on it over time with what makes a person and what makes a mother, and all of these different relationship dynamics that were happening in this book. If I continue to think about them and this book sticks with me, I could see myself bumping this book up on my rating scale or whatever, but as it is currently, 3.5 stars. It's also part of that whole weird science fiction situation, and I don't know if that weird sci-fi is for me yet. Next, I read Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. Don't know how to say his last name. Neuvel. I forgot the main character's first name, so I need to go look it up. This one follows this girl named Rose. A long time ago, she ended up falling into this pit, and it turned out to be a giant metal hand. And then this book takes place years after that. She's back figuring out what the hand is after she's gone away, gotten an education, and now she's analyzing the hand, figuring out what it's for and where it's from and who made it, everything like that. She's assisted by a couple of other people as well, which are main characters that you get POV from in the story. And then there's also this guy that goes around interviewing all of them that is nameless. This book is also told in a very interesting format. If you liked Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, you would like Sleeping Giants as well, I would think, because it's all told in interviews. You observe everything that happens through interviews between this mysterious guy and one of the characters in each section. There's not too much going on, really. It's just all of these different characters going around and trying to figure out what's going on with this huge hand and how to get it to work and everything like that. What do all these symbols mean? It's a lot of floundering and trying to just learn as much as they can. But that was one of my favorite things about this novel. I really loved all of this mystery. What's going on with this hand? What's going on with these symbols? What does it all mean? And who is this guy that's interviewing everyone? I thought that all of these different things were really interesting. I think one of my favorite parts was this character that's even more mysterious than the interviewer. He's this guy that the interviewer meets with at this Asian restaurant, and they always order Kung Pao chicken. I thought that was really funny and well done. I think that one of the main things that this book has going for it is that mystery aspect and how quick the book reads. I read this book so quickly, and I physically read it as well as an ebook, which is even better because I read ebooks so slowly, and I finished this so fast. So I had a really fun ride while reading it, but it's one of those books that after you finish it, you don't really think about it all that much and you start to forget things very quickly. So I already forgot the main characters' names. Like, I can't remember any of their names except for Rose because I just looked it up. Take that as you will. I enjoyed it. I ended up giving the first book 4 stars, and I also read the second book, Waking Gods. Waking Gods was nominated for the BookTubeSFF Awards in the science fiction category, so I had to read it for that. I read this as an audiobook, and I actually didn't enjoy it. Well, I didn't enjoy it as much as I was thinking I was going to. The audiobook has a full cast, so every character has a different voice that goes along with it, which is something that I've never experienced before. I've never listened to a full cast audiobook, and I didn't realize that I would not like some of the narrators and I would like some. So I started getting annoyed when the characters popped up that I didn't like the narration for. I just wanted them to go away, and I wanted the characters that I did like the narrations for to be the main players in the story. So I'm not sure if full cast audiobooks are for me, but that's how I consumed this story and it affected my reading experience. I thought that this one lost a lot of that mystery element. This one is more focused in on survival and desperate grabs for power and everything like that. This one also has a wider scope than the first book. I don't know, I just didn't really love it as much as I enjoyed the first one, so I ended up giving the second one 3.5 stars, but still all of those really fun elements are there. All of these different interviews are there. There's not much else I can say about this book without spoiling things, because there isn't that much stuff that actually happens. It's just a lot of bopping around. So I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and I definitely will just finish up the last book because I want to know what's going to happen. It's not my favorite, but it's still really fun. I still think that if you read Illuminae and you enjoyed that you would still enjoy this as well. The 61st through 65th things that I read in 2018 are going to be the next 5 volumes that I needed to read in the fairy tale manga series by Hiro Mashima. I really liked this set of the manga series because these first ones were finishing up a story arc of fairy tale. They were finishing up the Edalus arc, which I really enjoy. I thought it was cool. It also started a new arc, which is the S-class competition. Basically, Fairy Tail is a guild of wizards, and they all have different types of magic. Everyone in Fairy Tail is like a very crazy found family. They are so goofy and so weird, but they all love each other so much and are so loyal and are such great people to each other. Like, they're such good friends. I said this in a video a couple back, that whenever I'm reading Fairy Tail, I feel like I'm just hanging out with friends. I just feel like that's a very good representation of my thoughts on this series. I love the characters. I think they're so much fun to read about, and I care about them because they're just goofy and lovable. Anyway, in Fairy Tail, there are different classes of wizards because there are different classes of jobs. So the hardest jobs are called S-class jobs. Then there's regular jobs and everything like that. S-class jobs are reserved for the strongest of wizards because they're the most dangerous and they don't want people to take on more than they can handle. So in this new arc of the series, the characters are competing with each other to become an S-class wizard and to prove themselves and to be able to go on these very difficult, high-reward jobs. This one is my favorite of this grouping because my favorite character in Fairy Tail is Kana Alberona because I relate to her. I just feel like Kana and I would be best friends. I just love Kana, and I love that she gets so much time in this volume as well as this arc as a whole. But yeah, big fan of Kana, which she's not even on this one, but she's right there. She has card magic, so she can summon different things or have things happen based off of different magical cards that she has. I gave all of these in between 4 and 5 stars. Most of them were 4, but volume 23 for me was 5 stars. Those were because I needed some quick reads after all of the BookTubeSFF awards I read in the last week before the live show. I'll leave a link down in the description to the live show if you want to watch it and see which books won. I think they're also posted on the Goodreads group, so you can check it out there if you want as well. But the 66th thing that I read in 2018 is Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. I did a book review for this book as well, and I'll leave that up in the card symbol if you want to know more, but this follows a girl named Amal. At the beginning of the book, she's living with her family, and then she ends up offending one of the members of the most powerful family in her village, and the most powerful family takes Amal and forces her to be a servant in their household. I ended up enjoying this one as well. I gave it 4 stars. I think what I enjoyed the most was that this book was set in Pakistan and we got to experience the Pakistani culture. There's touches on the language and the different cultural aspects like food and weddings and just day-to-day life. It also touches on how the political system is set up and how powerful, corrupt families in small villages can get away with so much stuff. And I just really enjoyed Amal as a character. I thought that it was a little bit convenient and idealistic with how everything unfolds and everything like that, but overall I still really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I then read The Poppy War. I did an individual book review for this as well, which I'll leave up in the card symbol. This is the first book in an adult fantasy series that follows a girl named Ren. At the beginning of the book, she's living as a war orphan, and the family that she's living with wants to marry her off to better their opium trade situation. They want to marry her to someone that's 3 or 4 times her age, and Rin understandably does not want to do this. She decides that she's going to study really hard for this national exam that allows people to apply for different academies that are sprinkled throughout the country. Her only hope is to score in the best of the best and get into the top academy. Obviously, she's gonna go to this academy because that's how it works, but it follows her after that, maneuvering through all of these different situations with these teachers that don't really appreciate her or don't really like her presence. The students also treat her kind of terribly. Then it follows this world overall as it's on the cusp of another war, another Poppy War. Sorry, my battery died. If you wanna know more of my thoughts on this book, check out that review because I talk a lot about it in that. Overall, I enjoyed the first part of this book a lot. I really loved the coming of age story, the academy setting. I really liked Ren in this. I liked the other characters surrounding Ren, especially the very eccentric teacher. But after the first 40-ish%, I didn't really enjoy it as much. I thought Ren was a completely different person and just didn't make sense to me. I also listened to this on audiobook, which could have been a contributing factor for me disliking the second half because the narrator could have read some very whiny, weak characteristics into Ren that weren't there physically. I don't know. When I finished it, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Next, I read another middle grade book called The Last by Catherine Applegate. This is the first book in the Endling series, and it follows this character who is a Dairn, which is basically a bipedal dog that has a marsupial pouch. At the beginning of the book, Bix is living with her family, her pack. They're going around and they're avoiding people because people have been killing them. And by people, I mean the different races. There are 6 different ruling races of this world, which Dairns are one of those. And so at the beginning of the book, her Dairn pack is found and everyone is killed except for her. And that is why this book series is called The Endling, because the last living member of a species is called the Endling because after they die, that's the end of their species. It follows Bix after all of that, and it follows her as she is trying to survive as well as potentially look for other Dairns if she can find any word of them. She also travels with a bunch of different companions, like this little Wabik named Tobble. Tobble is a part of the second class of society who is an intelligent being but doesn't have any magic. I did an individual review for this as well, so I'll leave that up in the card symbol if you want to learn more. I talk about the world building a little bit more as well as more pros and cons. Overall, I ended up really enjoying this. I really like that this middle grade novel is set up well to address things like racism and classism and genocide, because obviously Bix's species is eradicated. There's just a couple of things that would throw me out at times, like the fact that all the characters talk about eating each other, which was kind of weird. But I also read this as an audiobook and a physical book. I got the physical book, started reading it, and then I kept switching between the audiobook and the physical book depending on what I was doing. The audiobook is narrated by Lisa Flanagan, and I think that she does an okay job. I still think I preferred physically reading it, but if you want to, you can borrow the audiobook from your library, and it does a decent job of getting the story across and all the feelings and everything like that. But yeah, I ended up giving this 4 stars. If you want to know more, check out that review. Oh, one last thing that I wanted to say was that this was giving me a lot of Wizard of Oz vibes. Bix is trying to find her home, trying to go back home. Tobble's trying to prove his courage. There's a character named Kara who doesn't care about people at the beginning of the book, so she's kind of trying to find her heart a little bit during it. So I thought that there was some parallels there. I don't actually think that it was supposed to be similar to Wizard of Oz, but to me, I recognized those things. Oh my gosh, this is so long. The 69th book that I read in 2018 is Legacy of Kings by Eleanor Herman. This is a Alexander the Great, or Alexander of Macedon, historical retelling with fantasy elements. It obviously follows Alexander the Great as he's living in Macedon post being trained by Aristotle. He's brought back home to help out with his country while his father goes off to these different battles and everything like that. So after thinking about it, I'm going to refilm this part, so sorry if this shifted. Alex also has this ability to look into someone's soul, basically. He looks at them, and if he makes eye contact, he's able to see certain things about them, understand how they work and who they are, basically. This also follows a couple of other characters. It follows this girl named Katarina who's living in this small village. She's got a magical ability to understand animals. She's able to communicate sort of with animals and understand what they want and understand what they want Katarina to do. She, at the beginning of the book, has finally reached a point in her life where she's ready to exact revenge for her mother's death. So she ends up following her kind of love interest, Jacob, to the capital because Jacob is going to compete in this competition, and it just makes sense for Katarina to go as well because that's where she will be able to get her revenge. It also follows Alexander's best friend Hef. They've been friends for a very long time, and Hef helps Alex out with everything, and Alex gives Hef everything in return. So they have this really close bond, but it's got a very interesting power dynamic because Hef only has everything that he has because of Alexander, and it could very easily go away. It also follows Alex's half-sister Sin, who is kind of on the back burner because she's a half-sister and she's not a full sister. She's very ambitious and she has her own strategizing going on in the background. And then finally, this book also follows this girl named Zofia. She is a Persian princess and she's trying to escape an arranged marriage. The main conflict of this book is that within the Macedonian area, there's a group of lords that are trying to eradicate magic from the land. A lot of people don't believe magic exists at all, but these people do, and they're trying to get rid of it. Obviously, it causes some problems because Alex has some magic, and so does Katarina. All the craziness ensues after that. I buddy read this with Shay from Shay Geeks Out, and we had very similar thoughts when we went through the novel. It's one of those YA novels that bites off a little more than it can chew, at least I think so. It follows so many different characters that you don't get to spend a ton of time with any one of them. It's also just very chaotic. There's a lot of different things going on all at once, and you can't really get invested in any character or storyline. I think that this book could have actually followed a few characters less and been a lot more interesting because you would have had more time with specific characters and less time with others. For instance, I don't think Zofia needed to be in this novel at all. Not yet. All of her chapters could have been within the second book, and it would have made more sense because she isn't really a main player in this and she doesn't really play a role all that much. So I think that it followed too many characters. The plot was kind of too spread out. Shay actually said that she thought that this book was very similar in feeling and tone to the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes, and I had to definitely agree with that. I felt very similarly about Fallen Kingdoms as I do for this book. Tons of potential, but then it doesn't really get there. They're both YA, they both follow a bunch of different characters, and it's a pretty regular story, and then randomly there will be something really intense that happens that's kind of out of nowhere. Like there's this one scene where there's like a weird sex scene with a snake sort of thing going on. It was just really weird. And then there'll also be random brutal deaths, and it's just like, oh, okay, guess that character didn't matter. Also, at the end of the book, there's a Q&A with her, and one of the questions was how the author writes nonfiction historical books. Nikki. And so they asked why she chose to write a YA novel, and her response kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. It seemed like she just kind of wrote this because it's like the hottest new thing is to write a YA novel. This was back when this came out. And then she also talks about how much quicker they are to read, which is true, they are quicker to read, but I don't know, it just seemed like very condescending and patting people on the head. So I didn't really like that either. So overall, it was like a lukewarm experience for me, and I ended up giving the book 3 stars. I also read The Legacy of Kings as the first book in my Ancient Runes tract for the Newts that are happening next month, but I am doing in July. The first prompt was to read a book set in an ancient time period, or set in a historical time period. Obviously, this one fit the bill. And the 70th book that I read in 2018 is Black Dog by Neil Gaiman. This is a sequel short story to the American Gods story by Neil Gaiman, which is his like most famous work, I think. Luckily, I did read American Gods before going into this because I had no idea. I guess I just never looked up what this book was about before getting it, because it literally talks about the main character of American Gods in this. This one is a continuation. I wouldn't recommend reading it until after you've read American Gods, but I did really enjoy this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It follows the main character Shadow in England, and he follows this old couple home, and then it's just basically a mystery about what the heck is happening. In this village that he's in, there's this rumor that there is a black dog, and if you see the black dog, then you're gonna die. As he's following this couple home, one of them thinks that they see the black dog, and then it's just kind of a mystery after that, trying to avoid death that kind of thing. This book is also illustrated, which I really liked the illustrations. Some of the pages are black. So overall, it was a really fun time to read this. I had a long break between reading American Gods and this, so it was nice to get back to this main character and see what he was up to. It now makes me want to go back and read American Gods again, just so I can remember exactly how Shadow ends up. But if you loved American Gods, this is a fun extra story, but it's not something that's completely necessary. This was the second book in my Care of Magical Creatures track. I haven't read the first one yet, but I will. This one was read a book that's under 100 pages or under 200 pages or something like that, because Hagrid, not the most well-read character. So this one was perfect for that, and I did enjoy it. So those are the next things that I read in 2018. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below if you've read any of these books. What were your thoughts on them? If you want to read any of them, let me know that as well. Do you have any recommendations for me? Anything you want me to know, leave it down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.